Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today I'm going to wade into territory that usually upsets people. But I think it's important that at least somebody speaks out about the issues of racism when it comes down to uh, homicide cases and the prosecution and the police involvement, and whether racism has anything to do with the murder or the handling of the murder. And let me just say, I am absolutely 100% for anybody who will speak up against racism and against if racism is a cause of a homicide, absolutely speak up. And if there is racism in the police department or the prosecution and it's being used wrongly, absolutely speak up. However, I have seen that there is a problem with racism being um, married to cases for the simple sake of agenda as opposed to actual evidence. And this bothers me because it is simply we want things to be done correctly and not done wrongly, both by the police and prosecution and by the citizenry. Um, for example, there a lot of times I speak about the Innocence Project because I feel they get a lot of people out who aren't innocent, and it bothers me because, in my opinion, if you're going to be the Innocence Project, you should never get anybody out who isn't innocent. And I find so many times they do. They find some technicality, which, okay, maybe he shouldn't have been convicted based on the technicality. That's a whole different issue. That's a legal matter, but doesn't mean he's innocent. And so the Innocence Project pushes a lot of cases where they say, "Oh my God, this poor innocent person was convicted wrongly," and I'm like, "Or was he? um, or is he innocent?" I'm going to be doing a video during the next week where I find this time, yes, a man was convicted wrongly. I mean, it's like, okay, here's a good case. A man was convicted wrongly. He spent, I think it was 10 years in prison, and he shouldn't have been there. And DNA finally saved him and got him out. And this was a true case, 100% true case of an innocent man being convicted when he shouldn't have been. So I'm not opposed to fighting for that kind of thing when it's true. Okay, let's get back to this case here. Okay, so this is the case of uh, Terron Evans, the death of Terron Evans. And this is a case where I believe that the evidence is pretty obvious, in my opinion, but the rhetoric and the agenda that is coming along with it is concerning to me because I will say this: the police have a difficult job, and so do prosecutors and all that. And some of them I don't like, and some of them I want to be fired. But if we attack all the time police and prosecutors for doing their job and claim it's racism when it's not, we're causing a bigger problem in that we have so few people willing to even join the police force anymore because they're like, hey, I'm not going to join if this is the way I'm going to be treated. Now, my daughter is a 20-year veteran of police in Prince George's County, Maryland. She's been a detective for the last, I don't know, decade. She has worked in child abuse. She's worked domestic. She's worked sex crimes, and she's worked homicide. And she is, by the way, not white. She's a biracial person. But even now that all this time says have it gone by, she's done well. But she's seeing that the department is having trouble getting new blood in there because people are afraid to join, and we need to have law enforcement in our communities. We need that. So we want to be careful about wrongly accusing law enforcement or accusing the entire department when maybe it's just one guy that needs to, he needs to be booted or arrested or whatever. So I want to see things as they are and be fair. And so I'm going to bring up this case because this is what happened in this case. And I'm going to read you from an article called the what the heck is the name of that? Falconer.com or something. I can't quite read the name of it. It's weird. But the title of this is Potsdam BLM activist believes her son was killed to silence her. All right. An activist in New York City. New York City. I'm sorry. She's in Potsdam. I don't know why this is in New York City. I'm not sure all this article is absolutely correct. Is seeking support on social media after her son died. Jennifer Braxton began organizing for Black Lives Matter in Potsdam, New York, in June of 2020. She was a vocal critic of the local and state police departments, especially concerning the ruling in the death of Garrett Phillips. Now, Garrett Phillips, if you don't know, Garrett Phillips, as I pointed the wrong way. Garrett Phillips, she's upset about the ruling with Garrett Phillips, which I don't quite understand. Nick Hillary, and this is back in 2011, Garrett Phillips was strangled in his home, which was an apartment in Potsdam. And Nick Hillary was arrested and charged and brought to trial. Nick Hillary was the ex-boyfriend of his mother. And he was found not guilty. He took a bench trial. The judge found him not guilty because, in my opinion, they didn't allow DNA evidence in. There was a lot of circumstantial evidence, but the judge decided he didn't think there was sufficient evidence, so he found him not guilty. So he got off on it. I mean, he did. And also, just to let you know, he filed a lawsuit. Nick Hillary filed a lawsuit against Potsdam police officer Mark Murray and other St. Lawrence County officials. And this was in 2023. Anyway, he lost. That U.S. Appeals Court strikes down Nick Hillary's verdict appeal in discrimination case. So he was not convicted of the crime of the death of this young boy, Garrett Phillips. However, he felt his life was ruined because the police honed right in on him and accused him of killing this little boy. And he said, my life was ruined because he was a soccer coach at the college and had no criminal record. And he says he was wrongly accused, wrongly taken to trial, and it ruined his life, which I would say probably did. But was he wrongly accused? And this is what she's been fighting for. So in 2020, she rolls into Potsdam, and she's still fighting this 2011 case in the sense that she still thinks that he was innocent, and the police department and the prosecution, everybody there, railroaded this guy. And so she's been out there fighting for. Let's show you some pictures. This is her son. This is Terron Evans protesting in Potsdam in 2020, and this is what she's saying now: truth and justice for Terron. And she's saying that he did the manner of death of his, what happened to him. She doesn't agree with the medical examiner and the police. She says he was murdered, and he did not take his own life. And she's fighting again here, justice for Terron. Okay, so anyway, so she's up there fighting this case, protesting. She's very, very involved in the protests to support Nick Hillary and say he was not killed by Nick Hillary. A lot of people think because there was a documentary called Who Killed Garrett Phillips, and I thought it was a terrible documentary, highly biased. And so the majority of people who saw that documentary think that not the ex-boyfriend killed Garrett, but the ex-boyfriend. So his mother was dating a police officer prior to dating him. The police officer was white and he was black. So the claim is that the actual police officer killed him or hired somebody to kill him and then framed him. It's my opinion, it's pretty much nonsense. I analyzed this particular case. Let's see, where's my, here we go. The link is below. Was Nick Hillary a victim of racism in the Garrett Phillips murder? And I determined that no. I determined that the evidence did indeed support that he was likely involved. And but because the judge determined that it wasn't, because he felt it wasn't enough to not have reasonable doubt, he found him not guilty. Now, so my video here, you can see it's a 2-hour video. Some of the people say, well, maybe you're a racist. You just don't like Nick Hillary. Well, Nick Hillary is from Jamaica, whereas my ex-husband is from. I was married for 25 years. So I'm very, very close to the Jamaican culture. And I have 3 children, and 2 of them are biracial and 1 is Black. And so when people said, well, what about that other guy, John Jones, the ex cop? I'm like, well, personally, if I were going to put the 2 guys next to each other and say, which one would I want to spend time with? It would have been Nick Hillary, because he comes across really nicely. He's a good looking dude. And John Jones didn't do much for me. I find him not very likable. So when people say you believe somebody is guilty because of race, it isn't necessarily so. Or you believe somebody is guilty because you don't like them. No, I actually like him way more than I like the other guy. But the ex-boyfriend, John Jones, has a solid alibi. He did not, and everything pointed toward him. So check out my video on that. And so that is where that started. Now, Jennifer Braxton, Baxton, sorry, Baxton, not Braxton, Baxton. She contacted me because she said I had done a video on Nick Hillary and this case. And she wanted me to analyze the death of her son and determine what actually happened. Well, I think that's kind of amusing, because apparently she never actually watched the video I did, this one, because she would find out that I thought Nick Hillary was likely guilty. And I don't think she would have contacted me. So she apparently did not do due diligence in watching my entire video. And because she's absolutely 100% thinks he's innocent. And it was all racism that got him charged. And, why would she come to me if I thought he was guilty? So, but she did, because I think she didn't watch the video. Anyway, she came to me and she asked me to analyze his death. And I asked her to send over the autopsy report and the toxicology. And she did. Now, let me read you the next part of what happened with her son, Terron. On January 8th, 2021, 26-year-old Evans was found dead in the home of his girlfriend. I'm not going to give the girlfriend's name because she believes the girlfriend was involved in his murder, and I'm not going to spread what I consider malicious gossip because I don't think she was, and I'm not going to just give her name out here. He was found dead in the home of his girlfriend. His cause of death is officially a heart attack caused by overdose on Wellbutrin, an antidepressant. Both the girlfriend and Evans were prescribed Wellbutrin, I can't pronounce it today. Wellbutrin. So the girlfriend claims that when she awoke that morning, she found Evans dead next to her with 2 empty pill bottles. Her explanation is that he must have taken the pills and died in the bed next to her. Jennifer Baxton does not believe this, as she says in her public statement. She says that Wellbutrin overdoses are known to cause seizures. The autopsy done on Evans showed no pills in his stomach. Baxton also questions the method of police who appeared on the scene, saying they delayed entry and CPR and used questionable CPR tactics. The officer in question resigned 10 days after Baxton filed a complaint. I don't know about that. I don't know what it had to do with anything. Most of all, Baxton was told by community members that the girlfriend was a known drug dealer and police informant. 5 officers responded to the scene, yet Baxton only received a minute of body camera footage from 1 officer. Of the 5 interviews police conducted concerning the death, she was given no statements. Baxton filed a FOIA request in April 2021, but has yet to receive the interviews and photos. Baxton has taken to social media to get her son's story out, namely on TikTok. And she's also got she's got a Facebook page, which is every day something is updated on there. So she's very active on social media, saying her son did not kill himself, that he was murdered, and she wants the case to be reopened by a state's attorney and all this kind of stuff. She wants this case, him to be proven that he did not take his own life, that he was murdered by the police, essentially. And why is that? Yeah. So why do you think that she thinks the police murdered her son? It may be via his girlfriend, because she was speaking out about Nick Hillary. So she's an annoyance. She's out there with her signs, and he's out there helping mom with the signs. And because of that, the police somehow managed to kill him off, just to get her to shut up, which didn't work apparently, because she's out there just as, Anyway, that's her claim. Now, I'm going to read you I did an analysis of the autopsy report and the toxicology report. I'm going to read that to you, the actual thing I sent to her. But just before I do that, I want to talk just briefly about this issue about accusations of racism, where they're not really an issue, yet they've been made an issue. And TikTok and YouTube, what the problem was, we got a lot of people there will immediately do shows. She's got a number of people who, it sounds pretty good. So they're interviewing her and they're talking about this. I say, oh my God, Terron. They're not profilers. They don't understand things. They're TikTokers or they're YouTubers who are doing a show, and they don't understand the details and have any depth of understanding. So there's always a way to bring out essentially conspiracy theories that are just simply not true. And there's a couple other cases. I just want to mention them quickly before I read what I wrote to her. So these are the two cases. One is the death of Tamla Horseford. She was a Black woman who went to a party, a soccer party with a whole bunch of soccer moms, and they all were drinking heavily. And she's with all these soccer moms, and here she is. There she is. And what the claim is she ended up dead. Whether she tripped on something or fell off a balcony or whatever, she ended up dead. And it was really sad, a terribly sad story. And I don't mind that they wanted to investigate this, be investigated well. But the claim that is always out there is that these white women invited a Black woman to their party just to kill her. It's like, what? Seriously, she was a soccer mom like everybody else is a soccer mom. They're not inviting her to their party to do her in. It's just absolutely stupid. Now, here's a picture of my daughter, and she's the one on the left. You can see the one that's not so white. And there she is with a bunch of white friends. Now, mind you, she's got Black friends too, but I'm just picking this picture out because this happened to be an occasion where, just like Tamla, she was with a group of white women. She came home that night perfectly fine and alive. You know why? Because all those women are her friends. There's no racism issue there. And I don't think there was a shred of racism here either. They invited her because they knew her from soccer, and they were just all having a great time together. Now, could it be that it wasn't an accident? There's only one way this could not be an accident. That could be that there was a fellow there, a couple guys that were there in the background, and theoretically, could one of them pushed her off the balcony? Okay, you want to go there, fine. But the guy was not white. The guy was Latino. So, but this whole thing is, oh my God, these white women invited her to kill her. What? It's just nonsense. And it's sad. It's absolutely sad because that's not what happened. And it's sickening to me to have that brought in. Now, the other case, oh my God, the death of Kendrick Johnson. This is a young man that ended up in a mat in the gym. It was a rolled up mat that was standing up. And he ended up in the mat suffocated. And so Kendrick Johnson. So I did a show on both of these. I'll link both of these below. All right. I want to read you there's been a huge thing that said Kendrick Johnson was murdered. And let me find it. All right. So parents dropped complaint. Officials aided son's mysterious death. Aided in covering up their son's mysterious death. Accusations that an FBI agent, the sheriff, and a school superintendent covered up the death of a Black student by placing him upside down in a rolled up gym mat has been finally withdrawn. Not finally, I'm saying finally. Withdrawn by the student's parents. The attorney for Kenneth and Jacqueline Johnson notified a state court in suburban Atlanta that it was kind of a mistake. It's a typographical error. I find that really bizarre. But they have been claiming for years, in the case of Kendrick Johnson over here on the right, that he was murdered by the sons of an FBI agent. So this is what they claim. The original investigation by the sheriff's office and a state medical examiner determined Johnson died of positional asphyxia when he became trapped in a vertically rolled up mat trying to retrieve his gym shoes. His parents insist he died of foul play. They believe that these two guys, I guess two sons of an FBI agent, were involved in his death, and the local officials covered it up. It is there is video that shows this absolutely could not have happened. That poor young man died accidental death. That's sometimes what happens, and yet this, because he was Black and because the family wanted to believe he didn't. It wasn't just, families are kind of funny about this. I want to tell you, I've had a lot of families come to me with when it's an accidental death or their child took their life, and they'll claim it was murder. And sometimes the evidence is so outrageously it's very clear that this was not a homicide. But they come to me because they will believe forever that their child did not either take their own life or do something stupid that ended up in they drowned or they just whatever. In this case, poor Kendrick, probably just did something foolish. And, we all have kids who have done foolish things, and we're just like, well, and we've done foolish things. I'm like, my God, I'm glad I'm still alive, but I've often analyzed cases like this, told the parents what I think, and they have never spoken to me again. And they will go on for the next 2 decades claiming that their son was murdered or their daughter was murdered. And it's not a racial thing usually. Usually it's just they just don't want to accept. I don't know why people would prefer their child being murdered than an accidental death or the child was unhappy and took their life. I don't know. And then we're talking sometimes child, I mean a 30-year-old, sometimes 35-year-old, not necessarily, a kid. But there is something weird that goes on in parents' minds where they want to somehow blame somebody else other than their kid being foolish or unhappy. It's just the way it is. But what I've seen with cases that happen to involve persons who are African American, who are Black, who are in an environment that has maybe a majority white people, suddenly now it's not just prove somebody else did it, but prove somebody else did it because of race. So this is where she comes down to. She says that her son would be alive, but the racist police up there killed him because she was being a pain in the butt about Nick Hillary and saying, even though Nick Hillary didn't get convicted, she's saying that, it was a racist thing that even got looked at, which it was not. The simple fact is he was her most recent ex-boyfriend. The son of the woman did not like him. And the mother dumped him because the son didn't like the disciplinary methodologies he used. I'm not saying he was even wrong, because sometimes I think moms are too lenient, and he might have actually been smart, saying, hey, you shouldn't be looking at television before you do your schoolwork. I might agree with him, but he is a boyfriend and not a father, so it doesn't usually go well. So anyway, the mother finally said, hey, he doesn't like you, and I got to put my kid first, which was the right thing to do. Well, he was not happy with it, as far as I know. So that's why the police looked at him, because first of all, he's the ex. There was an issue. He had a motive, and he was seen following the child out of the school lot. The child was on a skateboard thing, and he was following him out with a car. And there's a bunch of other reasons. So the police had to focus on him. It had nothing to do with race. So what about this? So she's out there saying, you're being racist. So therefore, because she was protesting and doing Black Lives Matter stuff up in Potsdam, the police decided to not eliminate her, but to kill her son, who just arrived fairly recently and was just kind of doing what, kind of hanging out with mom, doing some mom thing. And yet they kill him and not her, which makes zero sense to me. But that's the claim. All right, now I'm going to read you the letter I wrote to her. And the reason I'm going to read this is normally I would not necessarily speak up about this, and when I do something for somebody, I usually keep it private. But the reason I'm doing that is because I sent this to her. She asked me to do it. I did it pro bono. And I sent it back, and she didn't respond. And I said, "Did you get it?" And she didn't respond. And after she didn't respond a few times, she went right back out saying he was murdered. And I find that frustrating, not only because, if she didn't agree with me, she could have simply said, "Thank you for your efforts. I don't agree with you still." But I'm also bothered, but I'm more bothered, not so much a personal thing, but that she's still out there accusing the police of murdering her son. And I want to stand up for that. Not because all police are good, not because there aren't racist police out there or racist whatever, but I never saw it in this case, and I don't see it here. So let me read you what I wrote. Dear Ms. Braxton. So I want you to understand how he died. So she's still saying he's murdered. He was murdered. I have reviewed the materials that you have sent me and reviewed them again this morning. Before I state my conclusion, I want to say this. The majority of manners of death labeled suicide by the police are actually that. I have only run into 2 cases off the top of my head where I believe the deceased was actually murdered. I worked on one of these cases, obviously not for the police department, and the manner of death was overturned and the murderer was arrested and convicted. The police were not corrupt, just mistaken. The other case was Ellen Greenberg of Philadelphia, whose parents have been fighting for years to get the manner of death changed to homicide. This is an egregious case, and there is corruption. However, for the most part, police corruption in ruling manner of death is rare. Incompetence is more likely, but corruption rare. Having said this, I am most willing to speak out against corruption, as I have done with the South Carolina Superbikes case. I'll link that below. I have publicly called the sheriff corrupt and the naming of Todd Kohlhepp as the killer a complete travesty. Mind you, Todd Kohlhepp is a serial killer, but I don't believe he committed the Superbikes murder, which was a mass murder. I worked with the sheriff's department on the case, but have since called them out on the handling of the case. So I worked with them. I was down there in South Carolina, spent a week down there going through everything. And I came up with my conclusion of who I thought did it, or who you should look at, could give a good, strong look at, because I'm seeing issues here. And eventually the sheriff just simply, his name was Wright, Sheriff Wright, but he was wrong. And when Todd Kohlhepp was a real estate guy in the area who was found with a woman in the backyard in a container, he was arrested, and clearly he was a serial killer. And all of a sudden he confessed to the Superbikes case, and the sheriff's like, "Oh, look, it's, now we've solved this case too." No, because the sheriff lied about that. He lied about a bunch of things with that case, but the main thing he lied about was he said that the Superbikes killer, Todd Kohlhepp, knew something that only the Superbikes killer and the police would know, that all 4 victims of the mass murder were shot in the forehead. I've seen the autopsy. None of them are shot in the forehead. And Todd Kohlhepp could not have committed the crime. So now Sheriff Wright is under an investigation by the FBI for corruption. So other things, unfortunately, not that case. I still would like that case to be relooked at. But I'm perfectly willing to call somebody out, including the police and the prosecution. There's another case, hopefully remember the link below, Anderson Cotta case. I called out the police and the prosecution on that case. I believe they were focused on, they went after the wrong guy. I stood by that. And he was found not guilty by the jury very, very quickly, thank God. And I stand by that today. And I spoke out against the police and the prosecution on that. So I'm not against doing that. But I am very supportive of the police and prosecutors in general, because we need to have good police and good prosecutors. Anyway, all right. So I wrote here, also, to be fair, I'm not sure you actually watched my video on Nick Hillary. I do believe he is guilty. The police department may not have been the best, but evidence supports that he likely did kill Garrett Phillips, regardless of the not guilty determination. Now to your son. I want to say, as a mother, I think you did a good thing bringing him to Potsdam to fight on behalf of Nick Hillary and your take that racism was behind what happened to him. Now, I don't agree with her idea that racism was behind what happened to him, but I understand that she was trying to bring her son up there to do something in her mind that was positive and get him out of his own issues and focused on something. You feel like you're doing something for society, essentially. A charitable thing, that you're trying to help the world, Terron obviously had struggled with issues in his life and had gone down an unhealthy path. I'm not going to get into the whole unhealthy path. And to take him with you and involve him in a cause was a great idea. Having something to fight for, feeling needed, being surrounded by people striving to help others. This is something a caring mother would do. Unfortunately, Terron did hook up with a woman who was clearly not healthy for him. To be fair, he was not so healthy for her either. It was a bad combo. However, this does not mean that this relationship added up to murder. There is nothing in the autopsy report or the toxicology report that supports homicide. Terron did have a lethal amount of drugs in his system, and the overdose determination is backed up by the lungs having severe congestion and edema. That's a sign of drug overdose. Terron has no sign of injuries to his body, especially none to his face or his neck. He was not strangled or suffocated, because both would leave some injuries if somebody's trying to attack him this way or put a pillow on him. And besides which, if his girlfriend tried to put a pillow over his face, he's a guy. He's a stronger guy. Unlikely that would be successful. And it would show something different. With Terron's history of, and this is what she doesn't really want people to focus on, history of depression and suicidal ideation, and his volatile relationship with a new girlfriend, even having a caring mom and some purpose doesn't always overcome feelings of hopelessness. Suicide is often done on the spur of the moment, far more often than people understand. Terron's girlfriend may have been a catalyst, may have been a piece of work, may have lied about who knows what, but she did not murder him. As to the police murdering him because you were protesting their handling of the Nick Hillary case, police do not go around murdering people because they are a pain in the neck to them. They especially don't go after a protester's child to distract them from their mission. There are protests all over the nation on this case, and that huge negative media coverage, and sometimes the police department does take a hit. But this is just not the way they do this thing. They don't kill the detractors. And there's so many cases around the country that there are claims that the police department is corrupt and that people aren't ending up dead because they protested. I do hope you find some peace in that Terron was not murdered, that he simply had a moment of wanting to not feel whatever emotional pain he was feeling. As a parent of 3 children, I've had my worries at times that one of them might decide life was too much for them. And if that does happen, I hope that I will be able to realize that as a mother, there's only so much one can do. I think you did your best to help Terron, and I'm sure he knew that. Warm regards, Pat. P.S. I have attached the relevant information from the autopsy and toxicology reports that support the manner of death as a drug overdose. And I'm going to put this on the screen. This is it. So if you want to look at that and pay attention to it, there simply is nothing there that indicates that he was assaulted, that he was held down, that there was, everything points to he took an overdose, and it's the toxicology supports he took an overdose, and the lung issue of the edema and all that show that he had taken a drug overdose. And so I'm leaving it up there long enough so you can see it. If you want to take a picture of it, fine. I understand why she doesn't want to believe her son took his life. Or, even theoretically, it's a lot of drugs, so it's unlikely it was just accidental death. But, it's hard to say. People do things that are, they take something and then they just take some more, and they're not really, it's hard to say. But he wasn't murdered. And there's not a shred of evidence that supports he was murdered. Even if the girlfriend was a police informant, he wasn't murdered. And then, of course, what comes along with that is she's claiming that the EMTs were in on it and the police officers were in on it. Look, how would they even know? So they're called to a home where there's supposedly a drug overdose. They come in, they try to do whatever they can do. I'm not saying I'm not going to get into whether they did the best work or didn't do it as well as they could have. I'm not going to get into that. But the EMTs arrive. They want to save this guy's life if they can. They don't know who the heck this guy is. It's not like the police are like, okay, that's the guy we just knocked off. We just, don't help him. Come on now, that's ridiculous. The EMTs, that's their job, is to save people's lives. They come in there and they only can do what they can do. The police officers are just police officers. They're not going to be they're not going to be there on some kind of mission to make sure he stays dead. I mean, that's just stupid. And that just bothers me when I see this ludicrous stuff being pushed, because it's not just that one is claiming corruption. One is claiming that the EMTs and the police officers, everybody is involved in killing off Terron. And that's just nonsense. So, that's not the way corruption works. It's not this huge conspiracy theories. When I see this in a lot of cases, because it's impossible sometimes for a person to end up dead in a supposed murder by somebody within law enforcement or whatever, without bringing in 10 to 20 people to conspire. The medical examiners to conspire, I say all the MTs, the hospital people, the cops, the local cops. I mean, this is just nonsense. This isn't the way things work. So there can not be a time when a police officer might have taken some person's life wrongly, or that somebody died and the prosecution went after them wrongly. But the big, massive conspiracy thing is very, very rare, and certainly in this case is absolutely nonsense. And I don't like to see the police and the EMTs and all these people being accused, including the woman that he was living with, just being accused and trashed all over the internet, when there's really just absolutely no support whatsoever that they were involved in any kind of nefarious thing. So I understand why his mom wants to believe something different. But she's got an agenda. Her agenda has been to prove, and I've seen it with her entire Facebook page, that pretty much if a black guy dies, a black guy's hung or whatever, oh my God, he's been lynched, when maybe that's just simply not true. So the constant push to prove racism where racism is not bothers me. I want people to focus on where it really is, because if you're trying to change something, you want to focus on the truth, not make up a whole bunch of claims and nonsense that aren't true, because you alienate people and you accuse people of doing things they didn't do. And I think it's sad, and I think it's not right. I think it's not right. And so that's my statement on this. And I wish her peace. I do. But please stop accusing everybody up in Potsdam of killing your son, because that didn't happen as far as I can see. That's just my opinion. I'm a profiler. I'm looking at the stuff you sent me, and I'm just not coming up with that as being that his manner of death was homicide. I do not come up with that. And I speak out because I say I don't like to see people being accused of things that there's no proof that they were involved in. And I think that we need to support law enforcement as much as we can and make sure that we weed out the bad ones. But if we keep doing this to law enforcement across the country, you're going to have any law enforcement. And a lot of people are suffering, and that includes African Americans. That includes people who are in communities that are not so wealthy, because people are getting harmed, and there's no police out there. And police have pulled back even doing things these days. So I don't want to get involved in that, because I don't want to be accused of something. And that includes black police officers, because it's not just white police officers being accused of corruption and doing bad things, but black police officers as well, because if they're involved in some way, then it's claimed that, they're part of the problem because they joined that police department. And so it's become a real problem in our society. And I would like to see our society come together and work on things that are fixable and truthful. Those are my thoughts. Anyway, thank you for being here. New to the channel, please like and subscribe, and check out those links below. And I know this is going to be a super popular video, but I don't do things for clicks. I do things for education, and that's why I'm here. So thank you for being here. And yeah, we'll see what the fallout is, but I hope people start understanding things just a little bit better. Bye-bye.